Snap, narrated by Dante Mohammed. Chapter 6, Taken. Lucy and Gia headed towards the edge of pack territory. The sun had set and even the moon was not giving them light tonight. The crickets and tree frogs sang their song as they battled for the lead. The wind hissed around the two girls as they stood at the border. "You know how much trouble I'm going to get in, right? I'm going to be shackled to my bed for the rest of the summer." Lucy looked at Gia, who shrugged her shoulders. "Well, we can always go back to the house and wait for everyone else to come back." Gia smiled, knowing Lucy would never do that. "Let's get tracking, Gia." Lucy watched as Gia grinned widely and headed over the borders. She couldn't just sit there knowing a bunch of kids went across the boundary. She probably should have notified Sam, her father's Beta, or at the very least Winston and Adam, her father's Gamma and Delta. She knew she was going to get reamed over this, but too late now. Gia was fast as she ran over through the woods. She was also an excellent tracker. It was where she excelled. Lucy jumped near the next tree and quickly raced through the branches, jumping from limb to limb. This was something her mother had taught her to do. She was also trained how to do this silently. Her mother had taught her from the time she was little on how to be a silent assassin. She taught her how to use her werewolf strength in her human form, since there were times you couldn't shift. Lucy had never been in a real fight, but she was well trained. She often sparred against her stronger brother, which only helped prepare her. She felt confident that if they ran into any trouble, she would be able to neutralize the problem. After running for several hours, Lucy was getting concerned about not running into anyone yet. She raced to the top of the tree so that she could see farther, but what she saw in the distance confused her. She could see several silhouettes in a clearing that were carrying a couple of bodies back with them. "Gia, wait," Lucy called out through their mind link. "What is it? I see something strange up ahead. Stay here, I'm going to check it out." Lucy swiftly and silently closed the distance. She wanted to listen to them. She halted a few trees away and took in shallow, quiet breaths. "We have a couple of vampires, but I'd like to bring a werewolf back too." "I know she would like to test it out on one," a raspy-voiced man said. "A werewolf?" Lucy looked at the other two bodies that were covered in a black sack. Those must be the bodies of the vampires. What were these people doing? "Yes, I agree. It will be beneficial when she goes after the Diamond Pack," another voice said. "Wait, the Diamond Pack? Her pack? Who's going after her pack?" Lucy squeezed her hands together and then made a rash decision. She didn't put thought into it. She just decided. She would allow herself to be taken. She would discover who was after them. She jumped down to the ground and then ran. She jumped through the brush and feigned surprise as she ran into the people on the ground. "Ask and you shall receive," the raspy-voiced male said with a chuckle. Lucy felt a presence come up behind her and put a cloth over her mouth and nose. She could tell it was a drug to make you drowsy, so she quickly held her breath. She faked going limp and felt the man behind her catch her body. "Put the scent blocker on her and cover her. We don't need her pack trying to follow us." Lucy felt them spray her down with a strange liquid and then she was covered in a dark blanket of sorts. She had to fight herself to remain limp even as her body was hoisted over the man's shoulder. Soon she felt the man carrying her take off running. She had to let her head bob around as if she didn't have control, which was a bit painful. In the moment, she forgot to mind link to Gia, and now she was afraid to because she didn't want to give herself away. They ran for hours, all night in fact. She could tell by the change in sounds that morning had come when the men slowed down. Birds were now singing, and the night chorus had ended. The fresh scent of the morning dissipated, and the smell of dampness hit her nose. She could feel the chill around her as they headed into something. "Put her in there and bind her with silver. She won't be waking up anytime soon, but even if she does, she won't be able to leave her silver cell," the raspy voice called out. "I'll notify Beryl of the new test subjects we have available. We will be back this evening. Can you handle things until then? It isn't like they can go anywhere anyways," the raspy voice chuckled. Beryl. She knew that name. That was the name of the witch Meryl's granddaughter that was never found. They just assumed she was living a normal life somewhere. She wasn't sure what her plans were, but it involved the Diamond Pack. No doubt seeking revenge for her grandmother who her parents killed before she was even born. This would be enough knowledge for her, though. Knowing this alone was enough. She just needed to get this information back to her parents. Lucy landed on the ground with a thud as she was dropped from the air. It was hard, but she continued to play her part. The blanket over her was removed and she felt a cold metal clink around her wrist and then her ankles. Then she heard the sound of a metal door shut. "I've got it under control. I'm just going to go and take a nap," the guy yawned loudly. "Running all night is exhausting." The sound of footsteps walking away and then a door shutting was heard. Silence. Lucy continued to stay there motionlessly as she waited to make sure the coast was clear. Looks like they captured a wolf from the smell of her. Poor thing. I wonder how long she will last. The last one didn't make it more than a day. We are the unfortunate ones who continue to survive her damn tests. How long are we going to be stuck as her prisoners? Lucy listened to two voices talking and decided the coast must be clear. She opened her eyes as she laid on the stone-cold floor. She looked around from the ground first. She could see a torch in the distance that was hanging on a stone wall on the outside of the metal bar she was behind. She slowly moved so that she was in a sitting position. "How the hell are you awake already?" a male voice asked from her side. Lucy turned to see a man and a woman inside a cell next to her, and beyond them were the two other bodies she assumed were brought in with her. She stared at the other bodies on the floor in confusion. Her eyes then widened. "They're dead?" Lucy looked up at the other two. They were halflings, that's why. Not full vampires. The dose they injected them with was too much for their bodies to handle. Not a big loss on their part since they still have us here. The guy said, motioning to him and the woman. He stared at her suspiciously and furrowed his brows. "How is it you are awake?" Lucy shrugged. "I didn't breathe it in. I let them capture me so I could figure out what was going on." "You let them take you?" the man scoffed. "Idiot. Now look at yourself." He pointed to the silver chains. Lucy smirked and looked at the cuffs. Silver. Everyone knows that silver is the enemy of werewolves. It makes them weak and vulnerable. But not to Lucy. Aiden, Lucy, and Freya were all immune to the effects of silver. She looked up to the two in the other cell. "Are you two vampires?" Lucy asked as she took in their scent. She slowly rose to her feet so that she could take a few steps closer to them. "Yes, we are. We actually also came here for information but found out escape isn't that easy," the woman said, rubbing her wrists. There was some odd band over them. She raised it up slightly. "Some weird witch magic that prevents us from using our strength." Lucy looked at them. She couldn't leave them there. She shook her wrist a bit and smiled. "I guess that is the purpose of these two. So what are your names?" "I'm Tanya and he is my mate Zach." "I'm Lucy." She smiled at them. "Well, Tanya and Zach, ready to get out of here? I have the information I needed." Zach laughed. "We aren't getting out of here." He rested his back against the wall and sighed. "Oh well, if you want to stay, then that's up to you." Lucy jerked her wrist and the chain snapped in half. She kicked her foot out, breaking the lower chains as well. She then pulled a dagger from her back that she had hidden and picked the chains off her wrists and feet. "How did you do that?" Zach asked as he suddenly became very interested in what Lucy was doing. "That doesn't really matter, does it?" Lucy smiled at him and Tanya. She then set her gaze on the silver door in front of her. With commanding strides, she marched towards it and kicked the door in. The loud sound of metal hitting the stone floor echoed in the air. "Hey, what's going on out there?" Lucy walked out of her cell and watched as a dark-complected man with pointed ears came into view. She set her jaw in anger as she stared at him. A dark elf, a traitor to the fairies. "How the hell did you get out of your cell?" the man yelled. He grabbed something off the wall and lunged towards Lucy. Lucy narrowed her eyes on the elf and raised up her dagger. She pushed a wolf strength forward and sprinted into the man. She spun at the last second and pressed her knife into his side. Red liquid splashed onto the stone ground and trickled over her hand. She then brought her other hand forward and extended her claws deep into his chest. Blood splattered from his mouth as he began to fall to the ground. As he fell, he pushed a sharp object out and cut Lucy's leg. A sudden intense burning pain shot down her leg. She looked down to see what she was cut with, liquid silver that was laced with something else. The silver itself wasn't making her skin burn. From the scent, she could pick up traces of vervain. This was a vampire's weakness. She wasn't sure the reason it bothered her more than the silver. Maybe because she had pure vampire blood in her? But in either case, it was preventing her from healing. She limped over to the other cell and punched the door down using her werewolf strength. She then used her dagger to cut the bands off both vampires. "Come on, there are others here who will be alerted because of the commotion," Tonya said and looked at Lucy's leg. "Can you run?" Lucy nodded her head. Sure, it hurt, but she was going to run out of here on her own 2 feet. She ignored the pain and followed the 2 vampires who sprinted down a tunnel. The tunnel led to the ground above and she welcomed the fresh air. "Quickly, this way so we don't run into their guards," Zack said and motioned his head to the tree line. Lucy followed behind them, having to push her werewolf strength forward to keep up with them. She glanced back for a moment. She was running in the wrong direction. Home was the other way, but she could sort that out later. Right now, escaping was the most important. "They went that way! Quick!" Lucy could hear the sounds of footsteps closing in on them. With her wounded leg, she didn't have a chance at outrunning them. She was going to have to turn and fight. The Vampire's Promised Bride. Written by J.M. Snap. Narrated by Dante Mohammed. Chapter 7. Arms of Her Mate. Lucy didn't know what type of people the vampires in front of her were, but she didn't want them to risk getting caught on her behalf. The footsteps were getting closer and whoever was chasing them would soon be upon them. "I'll hold them off. You 2 keep running," Lucy yelled to the 2 vampires running just in front of her. "No, just keep running. We will meet up with our comrades soon. They will be waiting for us. They can help." Tonya glanced back at Lucy. "At this rate, they will catch us before we meet up with anyone. Don't worry, I won't go down without a fight." Lucy suddenly stopped running. Dust lifted in the air as she turned to face her pursuers. She might have a hurt foot, but that would only prevent her from running. Now fighting, that is something else entirely. She glanced back to see Zack and Tonya also stopped running. "Hurry, you 2, don't stop too." Zack and Tonya both jogged back to Lucy's side. "We can't let you risk your neck for us. I mean, what will everyone say if they find out a puppy fought on our behalf?" Zack said as he took his battle stance. He gave Lucy a crooked grin and winked at her. Lucy shook her head. "You 2 should have kept running." "Don't worry, we are close to our friends. They're on their way," Tonya said as the footsteps racing towards them slowed. Lucy watched as several dark figures stepped closer. There were a couple of dark elves and a couple of demons. She stretched her hands above her head. Tonya and Zack looked at her curiously. "Always best to limber up," Lucy smiled. "Looks like we will have some sore losers still around after the war. Oh well, guess there was only one way to remedy that." "I like this wolf," Tonya said with a smile. Lucy looked at the dark elves and demons. She was sure they had more tricks up their sleeves like the liquid silver and vervain. However, she had a trick up her sleeve as well. She wasn't a normal werewolf. She was a lycan and a princess at that. Her wolf was bigger and stronger. A low growl ripped from her throat as her body began to change. Her large paws curled into the ground as she straightened her wolf up to its full stature. Her light fawn color shone in the night. She bared her fangs and growled threateningly towards her opponents. "Have you ever seen a werewolf that large before?" Tonya whispered to Zack, who shook his head no in awe. Lucy took a step forward and waited as she watched the elves and demons in front of her. She was looking over their bodies carefully. She was trying to see if they had anything on them that could be a weapon against her. She had always wondered how it felt to face off against a real threat. She wondered how she would react and if she would rise to the occasion. Now that the moment was here, it was as if instinct just took over. She played through her memories of all her sparring sessions and all her lessons. They were all for this moment. The two demons had an intense focus on Lucy while the elves shifted their attention to the two vampires. Lucy watched as the two dark-skinned creatures moved in her direction. The two demons were large and bulky. They had black claws and yellow fangs with obsidian orbs as eyes. Demons were strong, but these were just regular demons. Creatures her mother easily took out in seconds. Her father fought toe-to-toe against the son of an original demon and won. So, they should not be a problem for her. At least not their own strengths. It was the hidden tactics she was worried about. At the same time, they all attacked. The elves raced towards the vampires and the demons lunged after Lucy. Lucy swung her body and collided with the side of one of the demons as she sank her fangs in the other. She latched on around his throat and clamped down forcefully. His blood dripped down from her jaw and pooled onto the ground. It was the first time she had someone else's blood in her mouth, but she didn't have time to sort her feelings out on it. A sharp pain hit her from her side, and she yelped, dropping the lifeless demon from her mouth. She moved back to see she had been stabbed by another one of those objects with silver and vervain. She growled and lunged into the other demon. She dug her claws in his side, gashing him open as she grabbed his neck in her mouth. She shook the body until a loud snap was heard and his body went limp. Then she heard another sound of a twig breaking. She lifted her head to see more bodies coming into view. Her eyes widened as she took a step back. She looked over at Zack and Tanya, who had killed the dark elves that were after them. They were sacrificing them on purpose to see what they were up against. They didn't have the element of surprise on them since they watched them fight already. Lucy scoffed internally. There was more to her than what they had seen. You don't get mixed with so many magical creatures and not end up with special abilities and skills. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw an ogre leap towards Tanya. She planted her feet and pushed off, intercepting the ogre's attack. Her shoulder was slashed open, and she yelped from the pain before she dove into him. She was honestly shocked to see an ogre. Most of those creatures disappeared after the demon war. She honestly had never seen one in person before, but had studied about all of the creatures before. They even had samples of their scents so that the wolves would be able to recognize them. Lucy was slammed backwards by the ogre's monstrous strength. She quickly hopped back to her feet and bared her teeth at him. Her fawn coat was now covered in blood. Her own blood oozed down her fur and dripped on the ground below. Her wounds were not healing because of the vervain, and this was starting to become a problem. She didn't want to have to do this, but she was running out of time. She was going to lose consciousness soon at this point. She backed up and took a protective stance in front of Tanya and Zack. She inhaled deeply through her nose and shifted her claws in the ground below her. She stared off at the various adversaries in front of her. She only had enough strength to do this once, but once should be all she needed. She dug her back feet into the ground deeper to support her as she took one more deep breath in through her nose. She then pushed out a blast of energy, like a sonic boom, that beat into the creature around them. The powerful wave shattered the bodies of the enemies in front of them. She felt her strength fading as she shifted back into her human form. She was soaked in her own blood, as were her clothes. Because of some troll nail clipping, she was able to shift back into her clothes. Her hands trembled on the ground as her vision began to darken. We've got to get her out of here before more show up. Zack reached down and lifted Lucy's body up in his arms. She isn't healing. Is it because of the liquid silver? We need to get her back and treated, Tanya said as they raced away. Lucy closed her eyelids as exhaustion began to take over. A strange, sweet smell hit her nose and started getting stronger. The scent was getting closer and closer. She felt them come to an abrupt stop. Ryan, we've got to get her back immediately. Her wounds aren't healing. She saved our lives. She is unlike any werewolf we have ever seen, Zack said as a man walked closer. Give her to me. I'll carry her. a baritone voice said. Lucy felt herself being shifted into another chest. Sparks of electricity shot through her body. The strong scent hit her nose as the body that carried her blanketed her in it. She felt a deep pull in her chest, and she whimpered slightly. She squirmed a bit in his touch, shifting more into his warmth. She was being pulled into him by an invisible thread. She knew what this was immediately. This was the pull and the scent of her mate. "You're going to be okay," his soft baritone voice cooed to her. Tanya and Zach looked at Ryan strangely. He was acting overly concerned about this stranger. "We think she isn't healing because of the liquid silver," Zach said, pointing to her wounds. Ryan scoffed. "Can't you smell her blood? Look at those wounds. This isn't from the silver. She is reacting to the vervain. Get a good whiff of that blood." Zach's eyes widened as he took in her scent. How does she have pure blood in her? "Looks like this wolf is really special. Makes sense from what we have seen from her," Tanya said, looking around the area. "We need to get her out of here." Ryan cradled Lucy gently in his arms. Her eyes were closed, but he smiled as she nuzzled into him. He leaned his head down and lightly kissed her temple. "I'm going to protect you from now on," he whispered and then quickly sprinted off with her. The voices were muffled as her consciousness drifted in and out. Did she feel him kiss her? She wasn't sure, but she felt his arms as he gently cradled her deeper into his chest. His scent was like a relaxing drug, and she felt her breathing level out in his arms. She felt like her body was flying as he raced away with her. The jolts of electricity continued to spark through her body from their contact. Her mind cursed at the fact she found her mate. It was what she wanted more than anything, but she couldn't have. She hated that she would have to deny herself of her fated mate. But for now, she would enjoy his touch and she would relish in this feeling. She finally faded into unconsciousness in the arms of the stranger, the arms of her mate. The vampire